One other thing that I forgot to mention is we're going to be recording the webinar, so we can potentially share at some point in the future. Just before I get into it, I just wanted to say some thanks. Thanks to the creator. Thanks to the Samuel Center for Social Connectedness and the Samuel Family Foundation. They've been supporting this work since the beginning. And also the Northern Manitoba Food, Culture and Community Collaborative. They've been supporting us creating some of the graphics that we'll be sharing in this webinar. And our friends at Decolonizing Water, they were going to be taking notes, but I don't think that's happening. So I forgot to take them out of there. Can ask a bit now. I'll start off by acknowledging that this work is not something new. This work has been for a long time. People have realized that we need to teach our children in our own way. And that started in the 70s when the National Indian Brotherhood put out the Indian Control of Indian Education policy. This is showing a quote from there. So acknowledge that. And I want to thank everyone who's doing the work in their communities. This is a big job, and we need as many people working on it as possible. My path in decolonial education began when I was young. I was lucky enough to have parents who took me out on the land, took me out to ceremonies. We would go out to fish camp and medicine picking and camping all over. In 2016, I started working with youth in my community with the goal of providing an alternative education pathway for the youth, which would honor the Cree or Ininiw knowledge and place it in equal footing with the Western knowledge. We started out doing land-based teachings. We did a 6-week teaching in the spring of 2017. We did talked about our history and did a lot of land-based activities, including like fishing, hunting, medicines, and carving. It's grown since then. We added more teachings, but there's still a struggle to realize that goal of having an alternative education pathway. So what I did was take a step back and went to these group of elders and knowledge holders and asked for help. And we started that work last year in 2020. We were supposed to get together in the spring in person and started out with ceremony. What COVID kind of changed the plan a little bit, but we had a summer intern and she ended up doing phone interviews with elders talking about land-based education and traditional education is what we were calling it at the time. We've since decided to not use that term, but call it decolonial education, or even better, the term that we're using now is kiwētotētān ininiw kiskinomākēwin, using a Cree name because we figured that was the elders were saying we needed a Cree name. She wrote a report for the results of those interviews, and we can share that link to that report for anyone that's interested. But we really started the work in September last year, 2020, when we had an in-person gathering, and we brought in the ceremony. We started off with a pipe ceremony, and we had a sacred fire going for 4 days. And that's where we came up with the idea of having this ininiw kiskinomākēwin based on the life cycle of which is based on these different stages here. And I'm not going to go into that too much right now. We're going to let some of the elders speak to that later on. But this is just showing those different life stages from a newborn to an elder. And then throughout the year, we were having Zoom meetings and we looked at each of those stages of life and talked about what are the important teachings that should be shared with a child or a youth or a person at those different stages of their life. And we came up with quite a few. This is kind of a summary chart that we put together that focuses on these different areas of language, of family and community, the land and physical teachings, and the spiritual teachings that are important to be shared with children, youth, people at these different life stages. And within this one, we only went up to skapeo. By that point in your life, we said that you don't really need the formal teaching. And so we kind of thought that that was a good place to stop it. But when you're at that stage in your life, you kind of have a good understanding of the teachings, and you know that if you need help, that where to go to find that help. The other thing is, I think that's missing in a lot of land-based education, the way it's done today, is that continuity. And that was something that I thought about when I first started, in this alternative education system. Our decolonial education is continuous throughout the life, as represented by those different stages of life and the different teachings they're giving, but it's also continuous throughout the year. And there's different teachings and different activities that happen throughout the year. So we also started putting together this calendar that shows the different seasons and moons and different activities that happen throughout that cycle. So at this point, I would like to invite Gordy and Madeline to share a little bit about the name of kiwētotētān ininiw kiskinomākēwin, and I'll just introduce them formally, I suppose. Gordy and Madeline were both born and raised in Kinosao Sipi, also known as Norway House Cree Nation. Living off the land, trapping, hunting, fishing, and harvesting medicines has been prominent in their lives. They were traditionally married and share their lives with their beautiful children and grandchildren. Together, they practice their traditions and ceremonies as ininiw, and preserving the language, history, knowledge, and traditions remains a priority in their lives. They share traditional teachings and lead ceremonies in Kinosao Sipi, and also travel to other communities to share traditional teachings. And with that, I'll hand it over to Gordy and Madeline to share a bit.
That's it. Welcome. Hello, everybody. My name is Gordon Walker, like Peguis was saying. This word kiwētotētān. Kiwētotētān ininiw kiskinomākēwin. Kiwētotētān means let's go back to our original teachings, the way our old people have taught their language and their way of life. Kiwētotētān is something that has been really coming out lately. Also to identify who we are as an Innuit. Our language is very important. It's very important because it seems like that it not seem like, but our grandfathers and our grandmothers left all the answers for us, for our healing, and for us to know who we really are as an Innuit. Our language is very spiritual. We say ininiw. Ininiw is the language. Ininiw, the Cree language. And so we say there's a word there that says nimuwin. Nimuwin, a dance. So we say animinamagawi nimuwin. It means a dance that's being handed down to you. So what is this that we are meant to dance? here on this earth. It's the spirit that we are given. And when we say nite, my heart, and then you say nite nani, my tongue, and you say nite nani mitan, I'm going to dance my heart with my tongue. So this is what ininiw is. Our people, have talked about pimatiswin. Pimatiswin. What is pimatiswin? Well, pimatiswin is kegono makapimitisahaman. What is it that we follow? Pimatiswin. What is pimatiswin in life? What is pimatiswin? So, kapimitisahama humagigon.
Sorry about that.
Kapimitisahama. So what is it that we follow? Kapimitisahama. It's the way the Creator set life here on earth, and also the natural laws of our mother, the earth. I'm going to show when the geese niskak come back, and the ducks, we say uyasisak, meaning the ones that go back and forth. And at the same time, we say uyasisak. Uyasisak means what you call uyasisak. Uyaswin means to borrow, and this is where we get our word from, flesh. Uyas. So we borrow them for us to live, and also we borrow this flesh for a short time while we are living here on earth. This is uyaswin, uyasisak. The birds that they come, and what you call we take their lives for us to survive. And then we go, when the ice leaves, we go to the fast waters to go and get the fish where they spawn. Yamichik, we call him. Yamichik. And this is where, as in Innuak, we get our one of the greatest teachings. Yamichik, we call it Amahamatwin, means to share. This is where the fish share with almost every living thing on this earth, because the fish share with the flying beings, and also the four-legged animals, the insects. The fish share with everybody, everything. So this is what Ayamahamatun is, the sharing that is being done. And and so after that, we say kapiminatik, the flying beings, kapiminatik, the flyers. Agamina kapimatakatik means the swimmers, kapimatakatik. And then after that, kapimitaigi means the things that grow. So the berries start growing, like otamin, like the hard berry, we call the strawberry. This is where all the berries are named after our body parts. I could mention them here, all of them. Like an uskanak, raspberries, it talks about a bone, uskan. These are good for the bones. The strawberries, the hard berries are good for the heart. And there's medicine in there that the old people use, and also us today. And then Misaskatumina, the Saskatoons, we say Miswe Tumina, it means to grease up your innards, so you'll have good bowel movement. That's what the berries are good for. And also, usapumina, 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 the gooseberries. And what that helps is for a man to clean his urinary tract. Yeah. And there's also,
There's so many other berries.
there's so many other berries that are named after uskisagomina, like the eye berries. It's good for the eyes. There's eye medicine there. And then, you know, we have mistagonimina, like, you know, the cloudberries, they call them, cloudberries. Good for the head, mistagon, the medicine for the head. And also, you know, ininiw, they call him ininiw, the blueberries. It talks about the human spirit in Innuak. And that is why we use them in our ceremonies. They're the color of the night sky for the stars, the spirits that are up there. So that is why they are used in all the ceremonies, these blueberries. In ininiw, they're good for the spirit. And then the last one that grows is this what we call the cranberries. Wisagimina, we call them. Wisagi means to kind of hurt yourself, or, you know, wisagi, and to pull a muscle or pull a tendon or something like that. To pull things, muscle. Wisagi. And then, you know, these berries are picked in the fall. And so we take them, and they're good for not to pull your muscles. That is why they call them wisakimina. And these berries are good all through the winter under the snow. Under the snow, they're good like that. You can go into the muskeg and you can find them there. Wisakimina. And then after this, you know, the moose starts fattening himself again. You know, when we go and get him, you know, we started drying meat, making pimigan, and everything else like that. And also the fish, you know, the fish again will go spawn. And then we started taking him again to prepare for the winter. And then the winter time comes, and this is where we had, you know, we had rabbit. Rabbits are good. You know, they were food for our spiritual helpers, our pawaganak, we call them, our guardian angels, for us to have good dreams during this time in the winter time. So that is what the rabbit is good for. And so, you know, these things, you know, are very important, the way our people live. And you'll start seeing, you know, people like, you know, if you check Facebooks, how old our people were. You know, they were over 100 years old. You know, people are lying about us that we only had a lifespan of only 30 years or things like that. You know, that's that is not true. Our people were so old because they followed that life the way that it was set here on earth. So we had followed that. So that is why our people have been really healthy. But nowadays we don't really do that. So we have become a little off balance, a little sick. But again, you know, there's people that are really trying hard to try and maintain that as you know, to live like that again.
To follow that Pimatiswin cycle.
To follow that Pimatiswin cycle. You know, I don't know how much time I have.
I was trying to message you and tell you you had 2 minutes left. Minutes ago.
Okay, so, you know, I will leave it at that then, and you know, hopefully, like, you know, that you know, for staying a little bit longer, if anybody has questions like Becky was asking there. So, you know, hopefully things like that. I can talk about ceremonies after, whatever, you know. So I guess I'm gonna ask a bit now. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks for sharing. I noticed there was one comment in the chat that you could just sit here and listen to those words over and over again to help remember them. But yeah, we are recording. We don't have a website or anything right now, so put a recording up on, but I think that's one of the things we're going to work on in the future. So next I'm going to invite Ron to share. And I'll just formally introduce him. I'm finding his bio, even though he's my dad. So Ron Cook, kept by the Eagles, or kiwētotētān, is a first language speaker of ininiw. He's a fisherman on Lake Winnipeg before he became a teacher of ininiw. He is a student of ininiw, following the instructions of the elders to learn what the language is saying about the ininiw and their worldview. He has followed the traditional path for 40 years and is the Sundance chief for the McKay Lake Sundance in Grand Rapids, Manitoba. So can go ahead, Ron.
Igo sama. Kinanas commit now on this Kagisigar. My name is Ron Cook. I guess the name the grandfathers and grandmothers know me by is kiwētotētān from the Bear Clan. Originally from Grand Rapids, now living in Thompson. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that I've learned from elders, and especially about the life stages, the change of the life stages of the child and the things they're learning. And this is what we're trying to base our project on, these teachings, because one of the elders told me that our word for child, hawasis, it means hewa satawa, he's shining. This is a little light, because that child is sacred when it comes from the spirit world. And they say it's the man and the woman that make the body for that child, but that spirit comes from the spirit world, say through. And they call that light the wates, that light, that spirit. And when it hits the fetus, that body that the man and the woman have made, that's when the life begins. And when the woman is carrying the child, they say, hey, giskawawa, so she's wearing that light. And then when the child is born, they say, hey, wapanawa, so that she's showing the light. And so that first one, we call it uskawasis, that new little light, that newborn child. And during this time, they say that child is so sacred that people can see that light, they can feel the sacredness of the child. And that child is a healer during this time, because it just makes everybody that's near that child, makes them want to be a better person. And they say that he comes with a name. The grandfathers and the grandmothers in the spirit world are all going to know that child's name. So the parents have a responsibility to ask for that child's name. And that's what they call the spirit name. And it's just named the grandfather. So they ask an elder who's just smoked a pipe, or they'll ask them to get that name for that child. And that name gives them an idea of the gift of that child. And during this time, that before that child is walking, it's not allowed to touch the earth. It's carried around in a tikanagan or takunigan. And it observes the world around it. When that takunigan is held, it's sat in an upright position. The mother and the father take that child wherever they go, and they set it up so that he can preserve the land or earth around it. And during this time too, it's listening to the language. This is the mother, the father are singing, talking to him, talking to her all through this time, so that it hears the language and gets to know that sound of that language, and learning, and it's being nurtured, made to feel safe, made to feel welcome in this world. And that the mother is breastfeeding that child. It's showing that, it's letting that child know that it's in a safe place, and that connection between mother and child is so sacred during this time. And so when we move on to a pistawas, is that little shining light, that's a toddler stage, and then And during this time, that child is learning to walk, learning to talk. And the what they have is when the child learns to walk, the parents will have a walking out ceremony where the child comes out of this building, a teepee, usually set up a teepee and do that walking out ceremony, and the child walks out and his feet touch the earth for the first time. And that begins his teaching of his or her connection to the earth, and all the things that learning to look after the earth, looking to see that this earth is home. This is the one that's going to look after the earth, is going to look after it, and the responsibility of looking after the earth also. And so they have that walking out ceremony, and the child is learning to talk. And so it's very important during this time too that the parents are speaking the language to the child, that it hears that. And that's something that a lot of us are not very good at. As Cree speakers, we tend to speak in English mostly now. But that's one of the things we want to try and do, is change that so that we're speaking, if we can, to bring that language back to that child, is hearing that language all the time. And as it learns the language, it starts to ask questions about the earth, or this place that it's come to. And that question is those why questions, that the taneke, why? They want to know what this earth is, what this place is like that they've come to, because they're starting to be able to communicate. So as parents, it's our responsibility to try and answer them as honestly and as best we can on why things are the way they are on this earth. And then that last stage of that child is the wasis, where the child is now a little more independent. He's going around and visiting different relatives, grannies, grandpas, aunties, uncles. These are the ones that he's going out in the child and exploring the world around it and asking and finding out those things. And maybe going out, like Becky said, going out on the land with parents, going out on the land and doing those activities on the land, fishing, hunting, trapping, like Gordian said, all those things that we do as people, picking berries, all those things. That child is a part of that, and just learning about those things. And then the next stage of Scottis is that, I forget what they call that one in English. The Scottis means, but to me, it means they're getting legs. That's when they go through their growth spurt. And adolescent, I guess, is what they call them. But they're getting their growth spurt, and they're starting to really explore what they can do. They're being very active during this time and just doing a lot of different things and learning and going to the elders, going more and wider into the community and starting to think about life, starting to think about what their role is, because all this time, as he's growing up, he's been taught that, yeah, you're special, you're a sacred being. And all this time, it's time for you to start thinking about what your life is going to be like, what your gift is that you're going to share. And so they start going to maybe they go on their first fast, or maybe they'll go on their first sweat lodge, or go on their first hunt and have their first kill, or the young women will go on their first moon time and start learning those teachings of what that means. All these things during this time, these adolescents as they're growing. And then another one, the next stage is the Peguis, literally means a new little woman or a new little man. That with is at the end is the diminutive. And then they're learning. And in ceremony nowadays, we call this we call them helpers, because they're learning by doing. They're learning by doing. They're learning, helping the elders. They're helping around the house. They're helping all over, whatever they can, just learning by doing. And that's, for us, that's an important thing for them to learn, is by just to be active, to be doing stuff. And so they find those elders that are going to teach them, and they start helping them. And the knowledge keepers, maybe whatever their interests are, that's where they're going to those people and learning from them. And then the next stage of they take out that diminutive, and it's a new woman, a new man. And these are the ones they say that are invaluable into ceremony for the elders that are doing the ceremonies, because these are the ones that are doing all the work that they need. The elders say we can't have ceremonies unless we have those helpers, we have those people that are doing the work. And the Skapiog are the ones that are doing that. This is the traditional, this would have been around 16, 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old. And they're doing that work, and they're learning, and they're also teaching those guys, those new ones, those little, those stage before, they're taking them and teaching them the things that they learned while they were there. And so it's a collaborative effort, and that's what it says, that this, all these stages of life, it's the community that looks after that child. And so to us, that's what I think we're basing what our education system will go on, is just filling out these stages and what we're teaching them during this stage, what they're learning about themselves, what they're learning about the earth around them, and what they're learning just in relations, all those things like Gordy talked about, all those things that we teach a child. Those are things that we're teaching them. What do we teach them during this stage? And so I think that's it for me. It was it.
Thank you. That was a very good explanation of talking about what we've been talking about for the last year in 10 minutes. So next I want to invite Floyd and Phlin Sutherland to speak. So Floyd is a Blue Thunder Bear from the Elk Clan, and Phlin is a North Thunderbird from the Turtle Clan. They're elders and ceremonial leaders from Peguis First Nation. Their home is a North Thunderbird Lodge, where they have been holding ceremonies and sharing teachings and helping people for, I think, probably over 28 years. So Floyd and Phlin, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Oh, there we are. And say my name is Phlin, kiwētotētān. I'm North Thunderbird from the Turtle Clan. And I've been looking forward to this day, of having this webinar and listening and learning and sharing what little that we can, and hopefully it'll be beneficial for someone.
Yeah, my name is Misipawistik, and I'm from the Elk Clan. And I want to thank Ron for sharing a lot of stuff that we've been doing since quite a few years. Anyway, our experience, my experience was going out on the land and learning about myself. Okay.
Yeah, she was saying that this next year is going to be our 28th year of Sundance. And, we started going back and learning about our ancestral ways many years ago. And it all started, when we were searching as young parents, and looking for something that we felt was missing. And we heard there was at that time, there wasn't any medicine men's, doing ceremony in our community, but we heard there was one doing ceremony in our community. And I wasn't able to attend, and I asked Floyd, to take my tobacco and go speak to him. And so that is when we met Dave Cushing, and we started by going in for that healing that we needed, and for ourselves and our names, our colors, our clan. And but there were so many things that how we were taught about who we are, that I found was really difficult at the time. We started going to an elder's home to learn about ceremony and to learn about whatever it is, we were searching for. We weren't quite sure at the time. And that one night when we were in ceremony, there was political leadership showed up with a BCR. It wasn't legal because there was only 2 signatures. They were wanting us to stop, and whatever it was we were doing, and their reasoning was to keep us safe. That was so heartbreaking, and like anything that happens, you go through shock, sadness, anger, and that's the way it went that night. And then towards morning, I was saying, well, they can't stop us. They might have done that to our ancestors at one time, but no one can stop us now. This day and age, we wanted this for ourselves and for our children. So that's when we moved and traveled. We went to the sacred grounds in the White Shell. And there we didn't have access as well. At that time, back in the early 80s, we didn't have access to sacred grounds. We used to sneak in there at night and be out before the sun came up, and if there was anything that had to be unlocked, our young people did that. They were good at unlocking padlocks, and then we did what we had to do. And then over the years, we ended up, having meetings at different levels of government, and now today, like all of us have access to that sacred grounds, and that's where we learned. One of the sayings that Chief Seattle said, the earth belongs to us, and we belong to the earth. And that was told to us too when we were there. We didn't know there was these kind of passages, but through fasting, we were told that we belong to the land. And that's really important to teach our young people, how important it is that we are part of Mother Earth, and she provides everything for us. And whatever it is we need, whether it's healing of our spirit, of our mind, and our body, it's important that we pass on those teachings for the young ones to continue to find their way and take back what was taken from our grandmothers and our grandfathers, and this is something that's really important to me, as a grandmother and a great grandmother. And it's something that I'm always sharing. It's so important to stand strong and be who you are. Our names give us that understanding of our roles and responsibility, and the strengths that we do have, and the clans that we're from talks about our roles. And we have to take a look at those and learn and do what is needed to get done, so our ways of life, becomes our mindset of today, to be who that grandmother and that grandfather that's teaching you and guiding you, be that person to do those things. Also put on there, when you walk upon the earth, treat each step as a prayer. And we do that all the time, even when we get up in the morning and use that water, to start the day, to cleanse ourselves. We say those prayers, and we go for Mother Earth for providing all that we need to heal and to be strong. Which
Yeah, most of the time when we're out there learning about ourselves, about our feelings, our emotions, and all of those.
Hey, Jose?
Yeah.
Thank you. I think the stories you share, Faylene, really help us to better understand what that decolonial education is. You know, you raised your family in a way that kind of was aligning with those teachings and those older ways, right? So thank you for sharing that. Next, I'm going to invite Dave Swanson to share. Dave has been a classroom teacher, a school administrator, and a superintendent with Frontier School Division for over 30 years. He was part of a team and lead in the development and implementation of initiatives in Our Way of Life, languages, and land-based education within the school division. He worked for MF-NERC as a school administration specialist, which had him working directly with school administrators in developing school improvement plans and staff professional development. Dave has been part of numerous committees and initiatives with the province of Manitoba Indigenous Education and Training, Frontier School Division, MF-NERC, which is the Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Center, University College of the North, MASS, I don't know what that acronym is, Dave, and other Indigenous organizations. Currently, Dave is working on land use planning and natural resources management within the traditional territory of Ochekwi Cree Nation. He is also doing teaching with UCN, University College of the North, and supervising UCN student teachers in their placements at various schools in Northern Manitoba. Dave continues to be involved with initiatives that promote and preserve our way of life, languages, and land-based learning. He is ready to fight for the very survival of our languages and way of life. So take it away, Dave.
Like I said, thank you. Becky, and I'd like to say, first of all, welcome to everybody, and the opportunity to be able to say a few words. As Becky says, my name is Dave. My traditional name is Kinosao Sipi Cree, meaning Thunderbird, Stoneheart, Earthchild. I guess the topic I'm going to be talking about today is that why we need to do this. Why is it important that we revisit our kiwētotētān, to go back to what we left behind for a period of time, to talk about the experiences that I had within the educational system. And I could probably speak for the same for any type of the Western systems that are in place that we have to live by and abide by, and that impacts on our lives and our people. Just quickly, some of the impacts of these historical events and colonization. We have a long history of it, like the fur trade, the treaties, the Indian Act, the churches, the education system, the residential schools, and the list goes on. Even present day, I know as an example, within the our community of Kinosao Sipi Norway House, how we are impacted by the developments of the Manitoba Hydro. They've developed or they've dug up two what do you call them, channels one from Lake Winnipeg into Peguis Lake, another one from Peguis Lake into Kiskinomākēwin Lake, and they increased the flow and of the water as a result. I remember talking to one of the elders, and they said they remember the day the water changed. That was the day that they opened the channels. The one day it was nice and clear and everything was nice, and then when they opened the channel, he said within 24 hours, how the water was impacted within our community. So there's been a lot of that, and for me, as a person that have worked in the education system, certainly has, I've seen the impacts. There's been some things that have happened over the years that are encouraging signs that things we need to do, and our pockets of experiences, I call them. As an example would be when I was a grade 8 teacher, I remember having a class of about 30 students, and probably 29 out of 30 were fluent ininiw speakers. And that was one of the best years of my teaching career, that I was able to teach in ininiw, speak in ininiw all day long, all year long. And we had so much fun, so like I said, when you think about it now, how great that would be to do that every day now in the schools. And right, I don't think we are capable of. It's important for us to revisit and look at that again. The other thing was the day, and again, I was a grade 8 teacher, when our school division and our schools here in our community opened up our I guess at that time we called it outdoor education, but it was a land-based program. And that's a few years ago we celebrated the 25th anniversary of this. It's probably been 30 years since then now. And I guess the experience that our students we were able to provide for them. However, though, like we're still within the system, and this is what I want to talk a little bit about. Is as an educational leader, a former school superintendent, I thought it was nice to finally get in there, and now I'm going to change the system on that. But we're still operating by the same guidelines, the Western point of view. We're still managed by people who, their policies. We're still managed by people who are not First Nations and Indigenous, and so then they have no stake in preserving or continuing to make sure that our language is valued, our history is valued, our way of life is valued. And I have the quote from Wabang posted on there, and then when I read that, I remember reading that years ago, and I thought, wow, this is what we need. This is what we need to work towards. And ever since then, whenever I work in education, or I think about our kids, or I think about trying to do something for our youth and our young people, this is what I have in mind. That this is what we need to do. We need to make sure that we have the values, we have our customs, we have our language, that they have to be present up in front for our youth. And I think in that way, we have to make sure that we have to continue working on that. And some of the frustrations that I encountered in trying to change the system from within, being a language speaker, it's always our own people who are speakers, who are traditional knowledge keepers, who are out on the land, who value this. They were really pushing me from one side and saying, "You're not doing enough in there, Dave. You're not doing enough in there, Dave." And then from the other side, I had the supervisors or the other people are saying, "Dave, you're pushing this too much. What about literacy? What about numeracy? What about this? What about the science?" So you had to try to balance those. And it's not that we couldn't do numeracy, literacy, and science in our language. I think it's we're more than capable of doing that. And I think it's something that we, in looking back, I said, if it's happening in other parts of the world, we look at in India, we look at the Japanese or the Chinese, they're teaching in their languages, they're teaching their customs, they're teaching their history, you know, and yet they're still world leaders, you know, and why can't we do that as well with our own language and with our own ways, with our own customs? You know, we don't need anybody coming to tell us this is the way we need to do it. So I think that's, you know, I just wanted to say that quickly. And I didn't want to take too much time. I know, you know, as we move forward, there'll be plenty of opportunity for us to talk more and to meet and discuss some more. And thank you very much for listening to me. Egusani.
Dave. Thanks for sharing your experience. So I can't figure out how to change this to the next slide. Oh, there we go. So now I guess we'll kind of move on to the question and answer period. I don't see any questions in the question and answer section. So if you want to ask a question, just raise your hand and I think we can get you unmuted so you can ask the question. But while you're thinking about that, I'll also share that we want to do more webinars in the future, and we were discussing what we could potentially talk about next, and I think we'll probably do a Cree language, a webinar focusing on Cree language and teaching, and that will be in January, February sometime next year. One of the other things we want to do is be able to have more of a dialogue about this work and dialogue with a larger group. So that was part of the reasons for this webinar. But we also, you know, really would like to do that in person and on the land, because we all believe that that is really where this work needs to be taking place. So we want to, we're planning on having a spring gathering in Norway House in May 2022. And that will probably be around the May long weekend sometime, and like a week to 4 days gathering. And the details about that will be forthcoming. So I see there's a few questions. So we'll go with that. The first question is from my old friend Kevin Lewis from Saskatchewan. He asked, is there still an elders council still functioning in Manitoba? Kevin, I'm not sure like if that was a specific organization that had an elders council, or maybe I'll just throw it out to the panel too. Maybe they know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I guess I can, that's because when Kevin was here in Thompson, we had the Northern and Aboriginal Elders Council. And that was started, what, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, by a group of elders that said we needed a voice. It's kind of inactive right now. The only thing that they're doing is it's kind of on standby, but they still organize a spring gathering. Kiskinomākēwin, there's still all the grant money and everything goes to them, the elders council, to organize a spring gathering, and so their name is on that still. And there's a group of us that still they plan that, and that's pretty well all they're doing now. We had asked for incorporating, but we gave up on incorporating because they want to learn everything about you, and I said, no, I'm not doing this anymore. It's all up to me. But it's still there in name, I guess, and there's still people that are part of it, but not very active anymore. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. We have the next question is from Michelle Taylor. She asks, are these documents available to use? They are amazing and so needed. So maybe I will answer that one. The graphics that we're working on that were shared in the PowerPoint are still a work in progress, but we do want to share as much as possible. We are talking about creating a website so we can share. That might not happen right away, but other ways that we're sharing, we want to maybe share in writing. So that's something else we're working on, maybe writing a paper or something like that. But I created a Facebook page for the land-based work that I do with the youth in Grand Rapids, and it's sort of connected to this, and I had shared the webinar on that page. So maybe I can share some of those graphics. I will say though, the Cree calendar part of the last graphic that I showed in the PowerPoint, that one is still kind of in development. So maybe I won't share that one right away. And then another thing that I wanted to say actually with that too is that you know, these are the way that we've kind of put down on paper, but it might not be the right way for everyone, and especially across Canada, there's so many different First Nations groups, so everybody does things a little bit differently. Even within the ininiw, there's, you know, they have different dialects and different groups, and things might be a little bit different within those groups, but like by all means, we'll share what we have with everyone. The next question is from Rebecca Sinclair. She asks, how do we move these teachings into other areas of life work, such as climate change, other land-based programs, etc.? Do any one of the panelists wanna take that on? Maybe I'll pick Floyd and Phlin. You want to answer that one? Or no, maybe not. You have to unmute yourself.
What was the question again?
It says, how do we move these teachings into other areas of life work? And then she gives some examples, I guess, like climate change or other land-based programs. But I would say, you know, like, how do we use these teachings in our life? How do we translate that into how we live our lives is really what she wants to know.
Well, Floyd and I have been involved in a lot of truth and reconciliation sessions. That's what they're being called, but we talk about using ancestral ways to understand how we are connected to the earth and our role as Indigenous people, you know, our responsibility to take care of the earth and to learn from the environment. You know, I think that's another way of bringing teachings, ancestral teachings to other places, you know, and even with the Moon Lodge teachings of water, we share those, you know, when we're in other areas of working with people. And I know Floyd and I have attended some of the youth programs with the youth at and keeping water safe, you know, the taking care of water, you know, that's one of the things that we always talk about, and it's the first song that we sing in any ceremony or gathering that we have, whether it's with youth or whether any group that we have that comes here. It's important that we always share, you know, how we have to take care of our responsibilities regarding our environment.
Peguis?
Okay. Yep. Oh, I forgot to say Peguis.
Thanks, Faylene. Yeah, I think that that's a really good point, that, you know, a lot of these teachings teach us about our responsibilities in life, you know, and really throughout our life cycle, that's what we're learning about, our responsibilities and roles, and those do translate really well to things like this climate change that we're talking about. So
Can I
the
say
next-
something too? Can I say something about that? Because
yeah, sure.
one of the things, like, one of the things I've learned is that all the things we've learned about our identity and who we are and how we see our life here on Earth, it's very important. I think it's a voice that's needed now, and when we're talking about climate change and all the ways the Earth is changing because of the influence that humans have had on it. And I think as First Nations people, we have a way of looking after the Earth that's very relevant to today, that if we want the Earth to keep providing for us, we have to take our role a little more seriously and start looking after the Earth, or reciprocate that looking after. And I think it's a voice. I think that's why it's important that we teach our children their identity, the way we think, the way we see the world, our worldview, that they know that, because it's a voice that's needed today, and it's a voice that needs to be heard loud and clear. And we do that by educating our children. Peguis.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, for the next question, I think there's a couple of hands up. Maybe we'll go to one of those questions. Celine, you're gonna have to help me out and unmute those people. So Shelley, do you have a question? Try and get you unmuted. I can still see she's muted, Celine. I don't know if you can.
I've asked to unmute.
Shelley, can you unmute yourself and ask your question? Shelley Coco Roots. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that properly. Okay, well, maybe we'll move on. There was another hand up, Shirley. If you can unmute yourself and ask the question, Shirley, thanks.
Sorry, I'm unmuted now. I just had one of my students calling me on another Zoom chat to ask me a question about an assignment that they're working on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I think you got to my question.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, Shirley.
No, I'm Shirley. That was
Oh,
somebody
sorry.
else.
Oh, sorry. Now you're both unmuted at the same time.
Okay, so I'm Shelley. So I'm not sure. Do you want to be speaking to Shirley first?
Oh, well, I was trying to ask Shelley first and you weren't responding, so then I moved on to Shirley. So
Okay.
Shelley, we answered your question.
I
so
missed
that's
it.
great.
I missed it.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed your answer because I had a call from my student. I couldn't ignore her.
Okay, I think I'm misunderstanding what's happening here.
Shall I go now then?
Yeah.
It's Shirley. Shall I go now? Okay, good. I need that humor. Okay. Bonjour, Anine. This is my question. Here's the situation, and then I have a question. I accidentally put it in just the chat, but I work at a school division in the city in Winnipeg, and I create a language and culture program and then land-based education. And I'm kind of in a little tug of war with the school division because they believe that they own the lessons, the traditional knowledge. And I said, no way, absolutely no way. It's owned by my people in my nation. I don't even own it. you can't own our knowledge. So does anybody else come up against this or have any advice? The elders have any advice? Sorry, I don't have tobacco to offer. But any advice you could give me to protect our knowledge, you know? Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Shirley.
Can I answer that, please?
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Gordy.
This is Gordy here. You know, the thing is, like, you know, if you know, our language is so important in what we teach that, you know, if they can't teach it in the language, there will always be something missing. So it'll never be theirs unless they teach it in the language. They can say, I have this, I have that, but you know, our language is so descriptive in our way of life. They can say this is ours, but it'll never be theirs unless they started teaching and speaking our language. Like, you know, we say, you know, I'm in the council with the elders. I sit in the council at the Turtle Lodge with the elders. I'm a Cree elder there. Like, we have you know, there will Sioux, we have Anishinaabe, we have Soro. So we have all these people that speak their language there. So we were responsible for writing that wapunk that just came out recently. And you know, I sit there in that when we were getting to what is the best term that we can use to for our people to understand, you know. And you know, so I said, you know, our elders have always said,
Oh, I think they might have been having some internet difficulties.
Yeah, the elders didn't want them to share.
okay,
Hi.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, something happened there. And so, you know, we say, you know, I told them, like, you know, we say the old people have always said when they came into a place, you know, we say, you know, I come here to tell you. They didn't come there to force us. So, so, you know, in a way, you know, it's almost the same word. So I'm opening these pathways for you. I'm opening your spirit. I'm opening your mind. I'm opening your heart. So if you want to take these teachings, and that's the way our elders came into a meeting with nothing to force, because, you know, as ininiw, we know that if we are forced to do something, it is not a very good place to go. We know that by our experiences, our lived experiences. And so, you know, another thing is that, you know, means that you go around something. And especially we go around the truth so at times just to please people. And say, but at the same time, that word means it means that we're going to cripple people if we're not going to tell them the truth. So, you know, this is something that, you know, that you have to tell these instructors or people that want to teach, you know, native studies or, you know, things like that, that, you know, they shouldn't be there unless they have a language so they can really teach. That is all I have to say about that, Exani.
Okay, be good. Can ask them.
did anyone else on the panelists want to speak to that question about having administrators wanting to take ownership of the knowledge that we're developing for land-based programs or language programs or these traditional teachings. No? Okay, we can move on to the next question then. I'll go back to the question and answer. And we have a question from Michelle Taylor. And she asks, do we place ourselves on the learner's wheel wherever we are as learners, regardless of our age? So I believe she's talking about the life stages chart. Anyone want to speak to that?
Yeah, I guess I'll speak to that. I became an Uskapewis when I was 32 years old. That's when I stopped looking, observing things, and decided I needed to work and learn by doing. When I had to ask the elders if there's anything I could do to help. And I was in my 30s then. And so I became Uskapewis then. And I think because of all our life experiences and the repression of our culture, I think we start wherever we are. I think that's wherever we are. That's like, I don't think I could be a Uskawasis anymore, but I could be Uskapewis. And hopefully keep going. Because the goal, and it wasn't on the chart, but the goal is that we teach our children so that they become Ugichite, or in Anishinaabe when they say Ugijida. And a lot of people say that means warrior, but one of my teachers told me that it doesn't mean that at all. It means great heart. A literal translation of that is great heart. Gitsiote, he said. And those are the ones we teach our children so that they're great hearts. That means they give all of themselves for the good of the community. And that was his explanation. I thought that's so true. That's what it is. He said warrior is only a small part of it because they protect the community too if there's anything threat to the community. But other than that, they're doing that. And so wherever you are, that's where you start. Like a lot of us, I think, would start at that Uskapewis, where we become learners and start learning by doing. Yeah, was it?
Ron, for that answer. The next question is from Matthew Scammell. He asks, are there resources available for Indigenous youth educational programs in urban schools, like in Winnipeg or other southern communities?
Dave.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Dave. Doesn't even look like he's paying attention. Looks like he's writing a text or something. Did you hear that question, Dave? You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, yeah, you can ask it again. I read it before.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just repeat it.
Okay.
Matt asks, are there resources available for Indigenous youth educational programs in urban schools, like in Winnipeg or other southern communities?
Yeah, there are resources available. You know, I know some of the school divisions down in Winnipeg do have resources available, and there's also places like MF-NERC that people can get resources from. There's also the Indigenous Languages of Manitoba. They have resources that they could get resources. They can go there. You know, and there are others in the city as well. I think it's just a matter of looking around, and what I used to do with some of the staff is that I used to make a list for people to send it to them so that they could access resources, not just within Manitoba. I used to include other resources from different parts of the country as well. I could look for that list, see if I can find it. Is that, I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Dave. Maybe I'll add one thing, like just from my experience, I think, you know, we talk about resources and you know, you want a list of things written down that you can look at. For me, the best way, if you want to bring this into the classroom, is to, you know, go out on the land, go out to those ceremonies, establish a relationship with elders, and do that learning yourself. And that's the best way to bring it into the classroom, because once you have that basic understanding, you have that relationship with different elders, then you can, those are the resources right there. And you can invite them to come and help in your classroom.
Sorry, yeah, that's true. That the other thing you can do is that when you attend conferences or workshops, you know, you can do some networking there as well. And it's always good to talk to people, just, you know, make contacts as much as you can. And, you know, as soon as you start that making contact, you know, that other people can direct you to other resources as well. Peguis.
I just wanted to share, like my daughter, or our youngest daughter's family lives in Brandon, and her sons have long hair, braided hair. And there was this thing about braids and hair and all of that stuff going on there for a while, you know, in a lot of areas. So they called her and she went in. She's a mother, you know, she has all the teachings. And she went and she spoke through the PA system there about why hair is so important to our people and why hair is braided. Like, she went through all of those things. And then with that, they also called the elder from the Friendship Center to come in and talk about some things. So like, you know, in the schools, there's not only the academic resources available in many programs, there's always our own families, you know, the parents of the children that attend school, or the elders that work in different programs, you know, those kind of resources are available out there as well. Ekose? Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, I have something else to add. Hello?
Okay.
A lot of times when we do sharing with others, a lot of times they forget about the protocol, what has to go through before they do that. So a lot of times when people come, they just catch that part. So they said, well, I could take it into school now, but they forget about the spiritual part of it. And it's kind of like Mama sees, like any old way, you know. So it has to be done properly, you know, in order to get the full benefit of whatever you're teaching. Otherwise, you're missing most of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And that even kind of speaks to the earlier question we had about like the division or administration trying to just own the knowledge. Like when you do it in that way, it doesn't acknowledge or include that spiritual part either, right? And the true value of the teachings, I guess, that the students won't get because that part is missing. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. There's a lot of confusion about this one. This is where Shelley's question is. I guess we didn't answer it. I thought she said we had answered it, but we'll answer it now. So Shelley asks, or says, I would like to ask the elders' opinions on what they think about the idea of indigenizing our current provincial curriculum. I have been an educator for nearly 30 years. I am currently a faculty member at Brandon University. I work as an advisor to our PENT program here as well, and I am confused how Indigenous perspectives can be actually infused into a curriculum that is founded solely in a westernized system of education. Who wants to take that one on?
I could probably just add something because I was a school guidance counselor for 14 years. And I do have a background in university, like different ways of working with youth and in therapy. So I did indigenize a lot of work that I did because I know, because one night I was thinking about what's going on with our children, you know, what's going on with our young people. And one of the answers that came to me was that our kids are not connected to the earth. They don't have that connection anymore. So what I did well, it's a good thing we're in the country, right? So right outside our big windows, there was a field of hay, grass growing, and then when that wind blows, it looks like waves. So, you know, and when I would go into class, I would do the exercise of using I called it imagery. And I said, we're going on this trip, you know, because, you know, I talk about taking a look at things that we're carrying. So then we're flying over this grass, we'll leave that stuff there as each time we touch a wave, things that are bothering you. And we come through the trees and pick up things that are beneficial for us, you know, that are good for us to stay focused on a good life today, or being happy, or whatever it is going on. And that's what I would do with that exercise, because, you know, we are taught, and I went to University of Brandon as well, you know, and I was one of the students in the school, and we were having a very difficult time because FNAC was First Nation Aboriginal Counseling Program, was for indigenized healing practices. And it was very hard for them to teach us because they only wanted part of it, not the whole thing. If we smudged, they were upset with the smell. They was upset with the smoke, and we had a fireplace in the ceremony room, you know, and that's a sacred place for us. And then in the evening, they would do their what do you call it again? They would do their exercises, you know, these exercises, like it's a dance thing, almost like that's where they would go do these exercises. And for us, you know, as Indigenous people, that's so disrespectful to a sacred place for us. So like, you know, a lot of these places need to understand, you know, how we see these places, and to focus on those things rather than just a place of learning, just a fire, because for us a fire is very sacred, and it's a doorway to the spirit world. We don't go dance and exercise over it, you know, an hour later because they put a cover over it. So we went through a lot of things, you know, and trying to use our spiritual ways of healing, you know, and our versus Western world, because it was both there, you know, and we all had to either watch or participate in sweat lodges, you know, naming ceremonies, dream interpretation, and drumming and singing, all of those stuff. But when I was gonna do a thesis, you know, it was I had to switch because that's what they wanted. They wanted to own, you know, what I had learned, you know, what I had fasted for, what I had Sundance for. So when we did the pipe and spoke with elders, they said that I shouldn't go that way because it doesn't belong to institutions like that. It's belongs to the people of the earth. But unfortunately, sometimes when we work in a program and we develop programs, it's not ours, it's theirs, because that's what we're working for. So we have to be really mindful of what we're putting into the programs.
Thanks, Aileen. Does anyone else want to comment on that, or should we move on? We still have a few more questions, and we're it's 5:30 now, so maybe we'll try and speed it up. I don't know. We're losing a few participants, but there's still quite a few on who are listening.
Can I just say something about that?
Sure.
On Shelley's question there, I think for a lot of us, that's our frustration, having worked in the education system and those roadblocks that are put in there. One of the things that we learned when I was with the school district of Mr. Lake as a language and culture coordinator was that we had to have that upper administration with us, on board with us. We couldn't be fighting them all the time. And that was one of the good things about Mr. Lake, is that the upper administrations fully supported anything we did on land-based education and taking the students out and connecting them to the land, connecting them to elders. And so they were always supportive of that in that way. And then when I moved to UCN, it was a complete opposite, where the upper administration just had no interest in what we were doing and just kind of ignored everything we did and just went about their own way. So that's always a frustration, is that they're so set. The Western system of education is so set in its ways, it's hard for them to change. And I think that's why we need our own place of learning, our own ways of learning. It was it.
Thank you. That's a good point, because we've been talking about that for the last year, really. And that's like one of the main reasons why we're doing this work, and talking about a decolonial education, and talking about our own education, our own way of educating our youth, because the Western system is not cutting it. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Shelley, for asking that question. I hope you're still on here to hear the answer. So the next question is from Carl Gomp. He says, a great webinar. What advice do you have for white settlers like me? These teachings are so meaningful, so wondering how to keep my people involved in learning. Any takers?
Take them on the land. One of the things when I first started teaching, I was teaching a Native Studies course in high school. And I taught those students all year everything I could. And then at the end, I took them for 1 week out to a fast camp in Moose Lake. And that's where they learned everything they needed to know. Because of the way that camp was, it was a community where everybody contributed. And that's what the elder made sure everybody knew, that for that 1 week we're there, we were a community. And in a community, everybody has a role to play. And it was up to them to find their role. And all those students that we took out there, we emphasized that with them, and they all found their roles and they all did it. And at the end of the camp, they were just learned so much. One of the students came up and gave me a hug after and said, "This has been the best week of my life," he said, because he learned so much. And that's what the elders say, take them on the land, take them out and learn firsthand, reconnect them to the land, like Leoline said. They're losing that connection. And it's for everybody. We're all part of the earth here. Doesn't matter where culture we come from. We have to understand that the earth is here to support us while we're here. There goes it.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the panel want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Ron said. I think it's important, yeah, to take them out on land, and that's the best way to, one of the best ways, I should say. But I think also too that we include some of our history. There's a lot of discussion about the truth and reconciliation piece, and I think that's also a good place to start. And I think we don't have enough, in talking to my experience in talking to people that are not Indigenous is that how little they know of our history. And, you know, as an example of that would be like the residential schools. You know, not many people have heard or learned about what had happened. So I think it's important for everybody to learn about the history. I remember doing a presentation to MAS. So you had asked what MAS stood for. It was Manitoba Association of School Superintendents. And in speaking there, I remember commenting to everyone that they are all, you know, impacted by treaties. You know that, and it should be every student in the school should learn what happened. Every student in our schools within the province of Manitoba should learn and have the opportunity to go out on land. You know, I think it's important that they walk in our shoes or experience our way of life for a period of time, so that way they know they have that opportunity to be able to learn more about us. Peguis.
Okay, that's Dave. Okay, maybe we'll move on to. Oh, okay, I'll let you talk.
Yeah, or like Ron said there, you know, to take them out on the land, because that's where you learn about your strength and your weakness. You know, and when you're out there, like nature changes attitude, because you learn about yourself, your strength and your weakness. Could I work in when it's wet or raining or hot, cold? And all those things make a big difference when you're teaching, when they're learning about themselves. In a classroom where it's nice and warm, you could talk about being cold and they wouldn't understand that, how cold it is, and in a lot of ways that, you know, the elders used. We used to ask one there, I said, well, how do you know when it's too cold in the winter to go out? He says, boil a cup of tea and then throw your water in the air. He says, if it blows up in the air, it's too cold to go out. So when you take a hot cup of water and you got in the throat in the air, it'll freeze. And he said, then it's too cold to go out, and they're staying and they would talk about different things, tell stories, how to do things, whether making snowshoes or doing things like that. So a lot of times, you know, you have to go out in the land, and that's where you learn a whole lot. You know, and like even the children, you go to children, and you go there and you show them something, and when they do it, they just get happy and say, yes, I did it. You know, they just give it, you know, and that's where it all, you know, it's like, hey, you say.
Thanks, Floyd.
Hello.
Hi. Are you gonna comment too, Gordy?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, I think that is why we are here. You know, with the meeting that we're having, and you know, the meetings that we've been having, is that we are not being listened to by Western society about how we want to go about teaching our young people. So I think that is why we are here today. And you know, it's all about you know, like to know who we are, you know, not only as Indigenous people or, you know, ininiw, but also as a human being, Like, you know, the worst thing that you can do, you know, as a human being is to distance yourself from something that gives you life. You know, I think that, you know, for me, that is the worst thing that you can do. You know, for us, it'll be the land that gives us life, our mother. And to disconnect ourselves from that. So these are what you call really important to me. Like, you know, when as you know, I never really went to school, but I have sat with old people and they told me stories. These stories. And And, you know, if our stories are not being told, he said, you know, when the old people told stories, everything was alive. Everything was alive. Even the sun talked, even the frog talked, even the rock talked. And little did I know, they were teaching me how to respect life, how to really respect life, that everything is living. And this is something that you cannot get, you know, to sit in the classroom, but to be out there and to see how it is alive. You know, we have a brother, you know, before Jesus came over, we have a brother named Misipawistik, the Creator's son. This is our brother. What that means is Kawisagi Hatas Chago. It means the one that loves the spirit. Kawi Sama Das Chago, the one that invites the spirit to a good place. This is who Misipawistik is, our brother. Misipawistik. But you know, he always traveled. He has a bird. And this bird is whiskey cheese. What the white people term as whiskey jack now. The gray jay. Kiwētotētān. And so there's the first one that will arrive whenever you go out, when he smells that fire. And he's opening the door for us, you know, to start relating to the land. That is his job. That is why he's there. And this is the way our people started to learn about all these things, how we are connected to everything, the stories. You know, Niska means, you know, Niska means Kanigan Niska. Nigan Niska means to be a leader. It teaches us about leadership. Kakako, kakako. It means kakako means kakige mina kakige. It means forever and ever. It talks about the raven. And it talks about, you know, that raven is never going to leave us, you know, from up here, up north. So, you know, all these stories that come with the language, how we name the birds, how our old people related to all the animals and all the plants, everything. So, you know, when the Creator finished creating life here on earth, you know, the plant life and everything, he's created the animals. He created the animals. So what he did was that he gave the animals, you know, a medicine for them to keep until we arrived here, for the animals to teach us about this medicine that they have. And that is why all our medicines are named after animals, like Muskominanatik. It talks about the bear tree, but really that's the mountain ass. They say the mountain ass, but it's the bear that keeps that tree. The mink, it'll keep the valerian root. So all these medicines are named there, and that is why our songs are the way they are. When we sing songs about the animals and stuff, we're giving thanks to the Creator for leaving those with the animals to come and teach us. And when old people have dreams, you know, the animal comes and said, the Creator has sent me to come and show you this medicine. And that's the way it is. Like, you know, it's something that really has to be taught, you know, with the language, for people to start to really understand our way of life. Hey.
Thanks, Gordy. So Carl, I hope that answered your question. Give you a lot to think about anyways. We have a couple of more questions and then a few comments, I think. So the next question is from Jeremy Caribou. He asks, how can Western institutions meaningfully and fundamentally engage with Indigenous communities? And how can Western institutions innovatively integrate Indigenous teachings or traditional ecological knowledge into Western institutions without appropriating it and actually benefits both parties?
Can you say that in English now?
Well, I think what he's trying to ask is, I guess, you know, like there's this dominance of Western institutions, right? Like we're trying to talk about our own education system, but we don't really have an institution, and I think we talked about this too, that we don't even know if an institution is the right kind of place to teach our people our way. But you know, there's this dominance of Western institutions. So he's saying, how can Western institutions meaningfully engage or integrate Indigenous teachings into what they're doing without appropriating it, and provide some benefit to Indigenous communities? I guess I don't know if that makes more sense to you, but in reading it again, something comes to mind for me is that, you know, like an institution can't own this knowledge. We talked about that. And if a Western institution wants to integrate some Indigenous teachings into what it does, the best way would be to invite Indigenous peoples to share that knowledge in their institution. That would be one way of ensuring you're doing it in a way that's not appropriating any knowledge, and it would benefit both parties because you're having those Indigenous people come into your institutions, and I guess, you know, like from the economics kind of point of view, you're creating work opportunities. Anyone else want to comment on that?
Just looking at it and listening to that, I would say that that if we are to share or if we are to teach, I think I'm thinking it would depend on what the institution is. For me, anyway. If it's let's say that the health service, health institution, and if it's something that's going to benefit us, and yes, then I think it would be, you know, certain things that we definitely would want to share. But if it's another institution that's coming in to destroy the land, then of course my view is totally different from that. So I think the difference there would be, you know, is it coming in to benefit us? And that's how we, you know, that's where we would share. But I think it's important to maintain the control, to maintain ownership still of our language, of our knowledge, you know. And I think those are things that yes, we can share, but they're not for sale.
That's a good point, Dave.
Yeah.
Any other comments on that question?
I just have one comment on that, because what I would say, what does reconciliation mean? Because a lot of the things we're trying to reconcile with are all those falsehoods that they propagated about who we are, all those negative stereotypes that they pushed about Native people. And what does reconciliation mean to them? What are they doing? And it seems to me like they expect Native people to do the reconciling, but what are they doing to reconcile? What were those Western institutions doing? And that's what we talk about. They have to learn the truth about who we are. First Nations people, who are we? What are our beliefs? What is our worldview? Those things that we're trying to teach our children before they get lost. So they need to learn that, and they need to accept that too, that it is a valid view of life, is a valid way of life. And it's not it's none of those things that they pushed, where they tried to kill the Indian and the child, tried to destroy the language and the culture. All those things they did, those were just based on greed and wanting the land. And they have to reconcile with that, I think. Peguis.
Thank you.
I just wanted to share, like Floyd and I are strong advocates for truth and reconciliation, but we've never worked with an academic setting. What we've worked with programs that work with our people and work in our communities, you know, and many of them are learning about a different way of looking at our history, because they've only heard the other part too that they tried to teach us in school. And it sometimes it's emotional, you know, when we listen and hear when they're talking, you know, of what they've been told, what they were taught, and how they're taking a look at who we are, you know, attending sessions and ceremony and all of those things to try to find out for themselves, you know, what we are about and who we are. And but I didn't have good experiences when I was at university, you know, and but I did teach as much as I could, you know, when we were talking about our ways of healing, because I was in a counseling program, you know, and that's what it's about, healing, you know, it's about and for me it's about holistic healing, you know, and every day we end up talking about truth and reconciliation, even at work in our community, because, you know, not only other institutions have to work on this, but it's our own as well, you know. And I shared, Floyd and I had to go through a lot, you know, but, you know, it benefited us because we became strong, and we became to learn how to be kind, you know, and to be caring for everyone. And I remember one Sundance, you know, we had this young man dancing from Czechoslovakia, and the guy sitting next to him was very angry. He said, how come, you know, we are taking back our own spiritual practices, and then these ones come along and try to steal it too? You know, and for us, it was kind of a shock, because, you know, we see people as people, not as different races. You know, we're all human beings learning about ourselves. And Floyd told him smoke his pipe, and then after he smoked his pipe, Floyd asked him, well, what kind of pipe do you have? He said, the 4-direction pipe. He said, well, tell me about 4 directions. So, but he ended up, you know, when he's talking about the 4 races of man, because every direction carries a teaching, he began to understand where that was coming from, you know, through the treatment, you know, and us having to work through all of these things that we picked up, and having to deal with our own thoughts and the way we do things. So he was so happy that he learned about how he has these thoughts about other races, you know, and how he needed to find a way to heal that. And so you know, it's something that we all have to learn, you know, what we carry inside from our past experiences, how it affects us, how we see the world today. I know like I'm Cree, I understand my language, and I haven't spoken it for, I don't know if I can, because I don't ever have anyone to speak to. But Floyd grew up in a family, you know, where that language is gone because of residential school, you know, and all the things that impacted taking things away. And he found it really hard when I guess, you know, when Trudeau said something about, if you don't know the language, then you're not Indian, you know, but our people say that as well, you know, and when we're in ceremony, you know, there's never a language barrier, you know, never. When we're speaking to spirit. When Atsuka, you know, when they're giving us direction, there's never a language barrier there. We still learn and we still understand, and we can share those teachings, you know. So those are the things that we need to look at, and I find these sessions so wonderful because it teaches so much of how important, you know, bringing back the language into the lives of our homes is so important. It may take a couple of generations for some communities, but those that still have it in their homes and communities are so blessed that they still have that. But we have to do things in a way that we could bring all of that to others to understand that it's okay if we don't have that language in our lives, but we will bring it back and to everyone the best way that we can. Ekosani. Oh, it's supposed to be Ekose, right?
I think either way works. So it's getting pretty late. I think there's one hand up. Maybe we'll just do one last question. I noticed there was 2 hands up, but Casey put her hand down. I was gonna do 2, Casey, if you still want to ask your question, but we'll go to Taylor first, and then we'll just wrap it up after these last 2 questions, 1 or 2. Celine, can you get her unmuted, Taylor Belanger? Or Taylor, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Tansa, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Sorry, I'm just driving. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, so Tansa netitima kigomina niwakumaganak sipiku kiskinomākēwin nasigasun. So my name is Taylor. My spirit name is Blue Sky Woman. I'm from Northern Saskatchewan, Isle Cross, and I am the project coordinator for a new program called the Kia Land-Based Healing Project out of my community. And I've been about 1 month in now, and I've been planning some really good, amazing, really good programs, land-based programs. And one thing I've noticed, and one of the elders earlier had said this quite well, and she said the children are not connected to the earth, they're disconnected. And I really nodded my head to that because I myself are putting on some this big gray geese sometimes, and there's not a whole lot of involvement, and you see a lot of lack of motivation kind of in town. And our school does a good job in taking the kids out into the land, but I'm finding it hard to get a lot of people out to come to some of these events. And it could be young adults and other adults ages from like 20 to 30. And we do have a few sweats in town, but there's just no motivation. So I guess I'm asking, is it just a matter of time until they decide to reconnect? Or like, how do we get more people inspired and motivated to find a meaning behind reconnecting with themselves again?
Thanks, Taylor. It's a really good question. Anyone want to step up and answer that one?
Hello.
Hi, Gordy.
You know, about the lady that was just talking now, asking a question. it's it's right in a way that it's that time. We all have our time when we want to connect to the earth. We have that time, to we were young at one time and we knew everything. We knew everything at one time. And for young people, that's all we have to do now. That is why we need to write our stories again, to tell them the stories of our people. Even though we think they're not listening, to tell them the stories. But it's our duty and responsibility as parents also that we have to teach them, tell them the stories. Tell them the stories at our home. Cannot be just up to the institutions. Before we go, before we go on our separate ways here, I just wanted to say that it's apagaisiwin. Apagaisiwin means to sober up, Apagaisiwin. But it does not necessarily mean to sober up from drinking or drugs, or any kind of addiction. But also it means to sober up from what has tied us down. Apagaisiwin. And also, apagaisiwin to it means apaha. It means to untie. It's almost the same word again, where our old people, left these teachings for us to find in a language. So you say apagaisiwin, it means to start thinking clearly. Apagaisi. Aposo. Apaha. It means to untie these things that have tied you down, that have tied you down. And then you see, what is it? What is it that we use to untie these things? For us as ininiw, Anishinaabe, or Patak Sioux people. And then we say, for us, it is the land, the ceremonies, and our medicines. That is how we come to untie things that have tied us down. So this is something that that has really come to play, as we have come to learn again.
Well, I think he froze. Does any of the other panelists want to add to that?
I just wanted to
Hello
share
again?
on.
Oh,
Back
he's
again.
back now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You kind of cut out there, froze for a while.
I know something happened here, but
We keep getting cut
yeah.
off.
And this has come to in a few years that our ceremonies were banned, and we're getting to it. It has proven that our ceremonies are bringing things back, or the land is bringing this back. And so this is this is truth to our way of life. That we are really slowly but surely we are reclaiming who we are. We have not proclaimed who we are as ininiw yet, but other nations have proclaimed who we are. So it is something that for us to teach them, not for us to teach us. So Egosani, ask him now.
Kaylin, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to share, like when we first started many years ago and there was no one around. and just us. And what we were told at that time, just, they'll be here when so we sat by the fire in the evenings, and then I don't know when it started really, but after a while, it's night after night after night of doing naming ceremonies and talking and singing and drumming, and all of those things just started. So like, I think if you're thinking about these young people, like when they go into a classroom and ask how many people have their spirit name today, and more than half the class will raise their hands. Where at one time it was just us, just us. So you lead by the direction that we were given. Just be who we are, and it'll be there. So we just have to keep doing, what we're learning, and when people start coming, it will grow as things are being readied, for them. And even like now, we have it used to be the young children and the grandmothers, were becoming. Nowadays, it's young men and women to middle-aged men and women that are coming to the fire. It's a different age group, because all the other little ones, most of them have their names, already. Because for a long time, it was the children and the grandmothers, and that would be here getting their names, and that's how we were always told. If the elders and the young ones would learn the same things at the same time, the thing would come together, and that's what happened. So and nowadays, like there's so many of our young people wear their colors. They wear their ribbon skirts, they wear their ribbon shirts, and others see that and they ask about it and they share. Our young people are the ones that are talking and sharing with their peers. And that's how it's moving now. We don't have to do as much as we used to do. It's out there. So I think when people are just learning, they have to be patient and continue to do the work, and so spiritual guidance, and it will start.
Thanks, Faylene. Any other comments on that? Okay, I think that was good. Thank you for all your interest and your questions, and thanks to the panelists. We're already an hour and 10 minutes over time, so I think it's about time to wrap it up. But yeah, I just want to express my thanks to everyone, and we will find out a way to share this recording for this. There's a lot of interest in that, and to share more of the work. So keep posted. And Kinosao, any of the panelists want to say some final words?
Auf Wiedersehen. That's in German. Goodbye.
Just to throw this out into the general population, I guess I was thinking about prayer and how powerful prayer is. And I noticed that our younger people pray for strength. And in order to gain that strength, they're put through a lot of turmoil to gain that strength. So I began to teach them to be specific in their prayers, instead of asking for strength, to ask for guidance on how to achieve or accomplish something that they want. That's all. Thank you. Peguis.
Good advice. Good advice.
I just want to say I'm honored to be part of the panel tonight, and it's so for me it's an honor to sit and listen to all of our the guidance and the words that were shared by everyone. Ekosani and Miigwech.
Thanks everyone for sharing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Looking
only
forward.
one of those people that asked the questions and were listening to all the interest they showed in all this work that you're doing. So thank you to all those people. Thank you to the panelists. Yeah, you guys are awesome. Oh, Egose.
I'm grateful and thankful to everybody, and I look forward to more of these as well, and participating and even listening, and continuing the network, and even meeting more people across the country, I guess. So thank you very much, and I hope everybody has a good evening. Thank you, Becky.
Yeah, thank you. Dave, Ron, Madeline, Gordy, Floyd, Feliz. Egose.
Egose ginanasko mitinawa. Hey, hey.
Thank you, Celine, for your technical support.